The Powers Project.
John, how are you this morning?
Hey, good. How are you, Kurt?
I'm doing great. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Um,
Pleasure.
so I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience today. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what it is you do.
All right. My name is Jose, but my friends call me John. So I like to tell people that my pen name is actually Jose Esparza, which was my birth name, but my chosen name is John. And I'm from California originally. I grew up in a small town in Northern California called Cloverdale. And I was not supposed to live past the age of 13. I was born with a birth defect that left me partially blind and also left me with some other motor skill issues. And on top of that, I am a writer. Um, I have been like, people say, I'm so sorry that you're blind. And I'm like, why? It's all I've ever really known since birth. So
Right.
you can't really miss what you've never had.
Right.
Um, but I also consider it to be kind of a blessing because of the fact that because of my vision impairment, I've been able to have a very active imagination. Um, I remember as a child when I believe I was in fourth grade when this all started. I had a teacher in the special education program who would put pictures on a billboard. And one might be a picture of a clown, another might be a picture of, a mundane object like a vase with some roses. Another might be, you get the gist.
Right.
Um, and we had to pick a picture we wanted, and then we had to write a short story about it. And I enjoyed that assignment so much that my teacher actually gave me an extracurricular assignment, which was to do kind of uh, he called it Letters from Joe Montana, because I was enamored with Joe Montana when I was a child. Um, and he would like write these little writing prompts like, "Hey, Jose, it's Joe. Tell me about your day," or something corny like that. And I just loved that assignment. Um, and it was just, it was a thrill every time I got to do that assignment. And I just enjoyed it immensely. And that kind of kicked off my writing career. I went from that to writing short stories. Um, and eventually I started writing poetry.
Oh, very nice.
And
So,
yeah.
so all right. So for let me tell the audience. I think most of the audience will know, but just in case, Joe
Mhm.
Montana, it was the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. For those of you who don't know, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time,
Yes.
without a doubt. And so that's who you're talking about, which I could see how that assignment would be, how it would be exciting for you. So, do you feel like, as you were in school and you were doing this writing assignment, that the teacher was encouraging, and that do you think that that added to your excitement of wanting to learn to write and wanting to write?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a funny story, backpedaling a little bit. My penmanship, because of my vision impairment, is so horrible. I mean, it's horrible today. Just imagine what it was like when I was a kid. Um, the teachers begged the school to buy me a computer so I can do my writing assignments on the computer so they can read my handwriting or typewriting rather.
Yeah,
So
I
that
used
that's
to,
just
I had a teacher who hated my, but not because my penmanship was bad, but
mhm.
because I would write in pencil and I would write so light that she couldn't see what I had written. I don't know what to tell you. So back in elementary school, they wanted you to still write with a pencil. They didn't want you to write with a pen. So I was like,
Right.
so, so,
Yeah.
so with the fact that, all right, so what was it that you contracted or had that made it so that you lost your vision and weren't supposed to live past 13? And
I was
how did you
born
end up doing living past 13, obviously?
right. So I was born with a condition called, let me get my medical terms right here. I've got two of them in my head. Um, okay, so that vision problem was optic nerve hypoplasia. And the medical term for the water on the brain, that was the layman's terms for it, is hydrocephalus. So for those who don't know what water on the brain is, everybody has, cerebral fluid that surrounds the brain. Well, with this condition, there's too much of it. There's dangerously too much of it. If left untreated, it would kill the baby in a matter of hours. Um, so basically, they had to do emergency surgery within, I want to say, 48 hours. And it was to remove the sac of fluid from my head. And the doctors gave my parents a very grim prognosis. They told my parents that your baby is probably not going to survive the surgery. And if he does survive the surgery, he's probably going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life.
Mm.
And I tell people, well, they were kind of right about one thing because I'm not a vegetable, but I am fruity. Uh, yeah, I have a sense of humor, and I that sense of humor has gotten me through a lot throughout my 41 years.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and kind of a funny story that happened to me a little while ago. I was on a dating app, and I was talking to this guy, and I expressed interest in meeting. And this guy was probably in his early 20s. I think he was 24. And he says, I don't like old guys. No offense. And I'm like, old guy?
Yeah.
Really?
The thing that young guys don't realize is one day they're going to be that old guy that they.
But I told him. That's what I told him. I said,
But
well,
listen, to each his own. To that's how what I say is like you like what you like, and so
huh?
I don't blame anybody for having their preferences and wanting what they want. So it's like okay, well,
Right.
there's plenty out there who do like older guys and or old guys.
Uh-huh.
so so like no big deal. So obviously you're gay on top of everything else, and so
Right.
how's that worked out in the gay community for you as far as relationships? Because I know that there's a lot of people who buy into this nonsense that the gay community only is all youth oriented, and while there
Yeah.
is some truth to that, it I can attest personally that that's not the 100% true. I can tell
No.
you there's a big portion of people out there who don't care about it. In fact, don't even like young guys um, because of their immaturity and not knowing what they want out of life. Which that's because they're young. They're
Right.
supposed to have all those things answered yet. So I understand that, and so again, to each his own. But how's it worked out for you?
For me, it's been kind of a double-edged sword because not only am I gay, but I'm also a person with a birth defect, and I'm also a person who's not Caucasian. Um, it's been interesting moving to Florida from California. When I decided to make this move, people were like, "Oh, it's Florida. It's redneck. It's Trump country." And I'm just like, well, okay, but California has had their share of Republican
Yeah.
governors as well. So it's not something that I'm not used to, you know. But along the same lines, I have definitely experienced, I'm happy to say, not as often, but I have experienced a little bit of prejudice here in Florida.
Really?
And it's kind of hard sometimes to gauge whether it's because of the fact that I am an outsider or that I'm gay and they can just tell for whatever reason, or the fact that I'm Mexican. Which is also ironic because here in Florida, I'm seeing a lot more diversity than I did in California. Um, it's just weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely been it's definitely been um, hmm, I'm at a loss for words. That's pretty bad when you're a writer.
Well, it happens to the best of them. So, I will say this: I find it's strange because we have such a huge Hispanic population, especially
Hmm.
in Florida. And while we do have our redneck areas, like any state does,
Hmm.
we have had our more than fair share of Republican governors. The majority of the state are Democrats, not Republicans. So I'm not quite sure how that always works out that we get Republican governors, but
Yeah.
more Democrats than Republicans. But as far as the Hispanic thing, one of the things that I've always been pretty proud of. It's not to say that we don't have our issues with racism and things like that, because again, every state does, and every group does, and but for the most part, you know, if I've seen any sort of racism, I've seen it Hispanics against other Hispanics, like Puerto Ricans
Hmm.
that they're better than Mexicans, or Cubans thinking they're better than Puerto Ricans, or
Hmm.
really. So I think all that nonsense is silly myself, but otherwise you're right. It's very diverse here, and Parliament House was a prime example of that before it closed down. It had been an establishment here for decades, and you
Hmm.
could see old and young, black and white, everything from femme to your super macho guys. I mean,
Wow.
it was just everybody congregated into one place, and it was nice to see that. It was nice to see all the different types of people there and enjoying themselves and dancing and everything.
Hmm.
So I hope that's more of your experience in going into the future.
Oh, me too. Me too. I mean, just going back, when I was in California, I worked at it was called Epicenter Sports and Entertainment Complex. And basically, it's this huge building that has a couple indoor soccer fields, an arcade, a bar, you name it, it basically had it. Anyways, I was a janitor there, and I was kind of hiding in the kitchen having a little break with a soda. And this lady saw me, and okay, so like over here was the entrance from the kitchen to the bar. And this lady saw me, and just out of the blue, she looks at me and she puts her hands up like this and goes, Bolsa? And I'm like, excuse me? And then she turns around, goes to another Mexican person who is behind the bar, and asks in plain English, excuse me, can I have a bag, please? And I just like, what
Yeah,
just happened?
that's just uncalled for. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't I think a lot of times people don't mean harm, but they're so ignorant to what they're doing, they don't realize how they come
Hmm.
across. And I don't think it's intentional. They just aren't aware, and that's sad.
Yeah, it is. And I think personally, I think it's people in that situation are just like so used to the stereotype that,
Right,
oh, somebody who's a janitor who isn't white, so they must not be able to speak English,
right.
you know. And it's like that is such a toxic stereotype. And it was just like I even said to her, sorry, in plain English, you
Right.
know, and she still proceeded to, well, maybe she walked away because she realized her error and she was kind of embarrassed. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, you would hope that she would be embarrassed.
Right. Right.
Nowadays, people seem to have little shame to things that they do, and that's unfortunate because, you know, shame can help you make sure you don't make the same mistakes again. So,
Yes.
yeah, everyone seems to want to avoid that from. Yeah, I just saw something with Will Smith who said, he was trying to be remorseful without being ashamed, and I'm like, well, you should be ashamed for what you did,
Yeah.
but again, that's my personal opinion. So
Yep. Yep.
how did you become a writer, and how many books have you written, whether they've been about, and you said that you write poetry as well, but let's talk
Yes.
about your books first.
Okay. So I've written two books. I'm currently working on my third. The first book is poetry, and it was sort of a cheat, if you will, because I actually wrote a lot of the poems in that book prior to actually finishing the book, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, I wrote them long before I even considered writing the book. Um, in fact, my partner David, my late partner, one time we were laying in bed, and just out of the blue, he says, "I got a question for you." I said, "Yeah," and he says, "When are you gonna write me another poem?" And I just kind of shrugged it off. I was like, "I don't know. Whenever I get the inspiration." And it was very nonchalant because I didn't think I had, limited time with him at that point.
Mm.
I mean, this was actually literally a week or two before he passed away when he asked this question. Um, and he just like, he was disappointed. He was like, "Oh, okay." And, of course, me, I just went right to bed, you know. I wasn't mad at him or anything. It was just, you know, one of those things where it's like I had a dry spell and I didn't know when I was going to write another poem. I had no idea. And he passed away. And I remember talking to a friend of mine about my grief. And she says, can I suggest something? I said, yeah. And she says, have you ever thought about writing poetry about your grief? And I thought, hmm, not really. And she said, well, just an idea, take it with, take what you want. And I kept thinking about that. And then I was thinking about something else David said. Um, One time he said, you just frustrate the hell out of me. And I said, why is that? He says, because you write the poetry that me, as a non poetry lover, loves.
Yeah.
And he said, and it drives me nuts because you're just spinning your wheels. You're not doing anything with it, you're not sharing it with people besides me. And I think you really have potential. So get your ass into getting this stuff published. And again, I just shrugged it off because I think at that time I didn't feel like I had the, um, not necessarily the fame, but enough of an audience to say, "Oh yeah, I can write a book and people will actually go out and buy it." I didn't believe in myself, in other words. And it wasn't until uh, after he passed that I was actually challenged by a friend of mine to write a book. And he says, there's this thing called the Amazon KDP, and I think you have enough poetry that you can put a book together, and I'm gonna give you this challenge. And I took the challenge, and it's been a ride ever since. Now, I'm not a best-selling author by any means, but when you consider where I was to where I am now, um, I'm very, very damn proud of myself.
Well, all right. So, yeah, as you should be, because there are many of us out there who intend to write a book that never get it done. So, just is enough reason to be proud of yourself. So, tell me a little bit about you had a partner that your partner passed away. This is all right. So,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about this. Um, what was it like? What did he pass from, and what's it? What was it like for you to be in a relationship with somebody that you loved and who left obviously way too soon?
Mhm. It came out of nowhere. As cliche as that sounds, it's the honest truth. Um, I had just been out of a very short-term relationship, and I had written off dating pretty much altogether at that point. The person that I was dating ended up, um, I forget what happened, but it wasn't a good situation. I'll just leave it at that. And so I decided one day to get on a bus. I have many friends back home who are bus drivers or who were bus drivers. And I figure, well, I haven't seen Janice for a while, so I might as well go catch a ride with her and catch up. So we're chit chatting and we're going from one mall to the other. And we get to the other mall and he gets on the bus. And I noticed him immediately. I mean, he was just, he was very well dressed, handsome. He had sunglasses on. He smelled delicious with the cologne he was wearing. And it was just,
I
I
got,
was like,
I've never been a fan of people who wear cologne that make me hungry.
me either.
Because
That
I
just
go, you
sounded
smell
right.
good.
That just sounded right.
Like you smell really good, but now I'm the urge to eat.
But anyway, he gets on the bus and they start chatting right away, and that led me to believe that they were already friends. And I assumed that meant that they were friends for a long time. I didn't realize that, she met him just about the same time I met him. She may have met him like shortly before me because I remember her saying, "Now you're a chef, right?" And so they started talking about food. And I'm thinking, all right, I got to interject in this conversation somehow because I feel like if I don't, I'm going to miss my chance. And so I said, I'm banned from the kitchen, just straight out banned from the kitchen. Now, Kurt, if I said that to you, what would be your first thought?
That, you're not a good cook.
Exactly. Exactly. And he's like, why do you say that? And I said, I'm not telling you, you're a chef. He says, all right, tell me. I said, okay, fine. If you must know, I can't cook worth a dime. I can't even make a good hamburger. And he looks at me and he says, can I tell you a secret? I said, yeah. And he says, nobody can make a good hamburger. Hamburgers are very hard to make to perfection. And I said, oh, I don't believe you. And so we started, this banter between the two of us. And I remember looking at Janice through her rearview mirror, and she had the biggest grin on her face. And so when we get to the other mall, I go ahead of him, and sorry, I keep doing that with my thumb. Um, and I lean in and I say to her, I really hope this guy's gay. And she kind of laughs a little bit. And I said it loud enough to where I was hoping he heard me say it. Um, so we get off the bus, and I hadn't even gotten to the best part, Kurt. I have not even gotten to the best part. So imagine this: you're walking to the movie theater. You got a handsome man that you've got your eye on, in a matter of speech, walking behind you, and he says, "So what are you doing today?" My heart just leapt out of my chest at that point because I felt like, oh my God, he's actually got a little interest. And so I said, I'm going to go see the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And I remember to this day what movie it was. It was the second to last one that came out. And I asked him, what are you doing today? He says, I'm going to go to Petaluma and go see a friend of mine for dinner. And I'm like, okay, well, that's nice. Now, Kurt, put yourself in my situation. Next thing you know, he's looking at you, you're looking at him, and he drapes his arm right around you in the transit mall full of people and bus drivers. And he says, you know, I hope we're of the same persuasion or this is going to feel really awkward. Now, would you not just be blushing all kinds of red if somebody did that to you?
I'm sure. Actually, I'm the one who'd probably end up doing that. So,
Well, I was just like, oh my God, what is happening here? Next thing I know, he plants a kiss right on my lips. And I'm just like, holy camole, what is going on here? And so then he gives me his number. He says, I'm going to give you my number. I don't want yours because I don't want there to be any pressure. If you feel like calling me, I'd love to hear from you. I enjoyed talking with you. I think you're a nice guy. If you don't want to hear from me ever again, that's fine too. I just want you to know I enjoyed your company. And I was thinking a million things, you know, about what was happening. What is this guy about? Is this really happening? What's the deal? But again, I was also in a place where I was kind of like feeling like damaged goods. So for all I knew at that moment, this was all just a fluke. There's no way in hell this guy was interested in me. Um, so I remember I watched the movie, went back home, and I texted a friend of mine, George, and I said, George, you are not going to believe what happened to me today. And so I told him the whole story, and he says, call him, get your ass off texting with me and give him a call. And why are you still talking to me? Call him. And so I called him, and my first thought was, okay, he's not going to pick up. It's going to go to the voicemail. Sure enough, that's what happened. And so I just left a message saying, hey, David, just wanted to say hi. I really enjoyed meeting you today. Um, and I thought I'd give you a call. So give me a call. And I just left it at that. Needless to say, from that point on, I had no idea I was going to end up falling in love with this guy. When we got together, sorry, there's something here.
there we go.
When we got together, he immediately fell in love with me. And to me, it was sort of a red flag, but I was like, well, he does seem sincere. Let's just see where this goes. And we got together a few times, and there was just nothing about him that screamed red flags from that point on. It was all just, you know, butter on bread. That's the
How
best way I can describe it.
how long were you in a relationship before he passed away, and how did that happen?
Well, we were actually in a relationship for not that long, just over a year, um, 15 months to the day, actually. No, yeah, 15 months to the day. And he actually had a heart condition, which I found out about. Honestly, I think we both kind of found out about it at the same time. Um, about 3 months into the relationship, we were at breakfast, and he started to saying, I'm going to go home and rest because I don't feel well. And he started kind of putting his hand on his chest. And I said, are you okay? And he says, I think I'll be fine. I said, "Are you sure?" He says, "Yeah, I'll be fine." I said, "Okay, well, call me when you get home." Because in my head, I'm thinking something's not right. Something's not right here, and I'm getting concerned. And neither one of us could drive, and that's going to come into play here in a little bit in my story. But I told him, "Okay, call me when you get home." I go home and I don't hear from him, and I'm starting to panic. And I called him and I said, "Dave, how come you haven't called me?" And he's breathing really heavy. He says, "I think I'm having a heart attack." And I started panicking because, like I said, I don't drive, so I couldn't, you know, drive over there and
Right.
help him. And fortunately, he was living with a friend of his. And he says, "Well, I just called Georgia. She's on her way to pick me up now." I said, "Good." And I said, "I'll meet you at the hospital." So we get to the hospital, and then it's found out that he had coronary artery disease. And he looks at me and he's like, "Well, I hope you don't think this is a secret I've been keeping from you." And I said to him, "Even if it is, would it matter at this point? Because we've spent a lot of time together, and, obviously we have really deep feelings for each other." And he said, "I'm just saying that if you want to walk away, I would totally understand right now." And I said, "Dave, don't even say that." I said, "You know what? We made a promise to each other to stay together through thick and thin." And at the time, same sex marriage wasn't legal.
Right.
And I told him, I said, "As far as I'm concerned, we're committed to each other, period. You know, we've already made that vow to each other." And so he says, "Okay, well, I just want you to know that I don't blame you if you want to walk away at any time." And I said, "We got this, Dave. Trust me. I'm still here. You're still here. We'll get through this." And so at that point, I kind of had the attitude that we were living like millionaires. And what I mean by that is that, if we wanted to go to San Francisco for the day, we went to San Francisco. If we wanted to go to Disneyland, we would have gone to Disneyland. We didn't get that chance, but we were planning it shortly before he passed away. Um, and so going back full circle to what it's been like in the relationship versus the books, that whole experience is what inspired me to write and get those books published and keep publishing books.
Well, that's, you know, I think people sometimes don't understand that it's not about the quantity but the quality of the relationship, and
Yes.
you can see people with short relationships who've lived who've had these amazing relationships that for what one reason or another didn't last. And then you've had other people who've been together for 30 years and it's not much of a relationship because there's no
Mhm.
quality there. So I think anytime we have a chance to have a relationship like that, regardless of how long or short it is, it's an amazing event that you should always appreciate. And it sounds like he did, inspire you to do more. So out of this, you start writing
Mhm.
and you start doing something with it, which again, like I said, is a reason enough to be proud of your accomplishments. So, what do you write? Fiction? I mean, besides, I know you write the poetry, but do you
Mhm.
write your other books fiction, nonfiction, or what are they?
Fiction. My last book that I wrote, which I have right here, is called Poetic Voyages 2. It's the sequel to my first book. Let's see there. Oh, it's not going to work. Anyways, it's called Poetic Voyages 2, Poems and Tales in Isolation. And it's my first book where I was venturing to cross two different genres. the first part of the book is poetry, and the second part of the book is still poetry, but it's more in line with storytelling. Um, Kind of a funny story is when I had a friend order this book, he was going from page to page sporadically. And I told him, well, you're not supposed to read it like that. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you're supposed to read it cover to cover. He's like, oh, well, that makes sense why I went to one of the pages and it didn't make sense to me whatsoever.
Exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I thought I told you that. Sorry. But yeah, so the first 71 pages is all poetry. And it's poetry that I wrote um, throughout the pandemic. Uh, I started writing it at the very start of the pandemic. And what's funny about that, Kurt, is 2 weeks prior to that, I had actually shelved writing this book. So, anyways, yeah, what was funny is I forgot what I was saying.
I have that
Ay, ay,
happen
ay.
I have that happen all the time. But I can honestly
Oh,
say it's not because of old age. I did this. I used to do this when I was a teenager. Forget what I was saying all the time.
oh man, I hate it when that happens. And then, of course, you remembered like long
Right.
after, and
Exactly.
you're like laying in bed that night, and you're like, "Oh, I remember what I was trying to say earlier."
So you seem like a man who doesn't let things hold you back, and
No.
you're not afraid to start over. One of the things I think that holds people back is they're afraid of starting over. I've started over so many times in my life, and every time I have, it's always gotten better. And there,
Mm-hmm.
if and as just like with this, with me doing podcasting, I've been a personal trainer for years and years,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew there was a time that there was going to come a time for me that I would want to do something else, and that time
Mm-hmm.
came. And I found this vehicle, and I was like, "This is exactly it." So change is a good thing. So you seem like you uprooted from California,
Mm-hmm.
moved to Florida. I'm sure that must have shocked some people that you did that, on your own, and were because they couldn't imagine doing it themselves.
Right. Oh yeah. In fact, I have a friend who recently told me just that. He said, I admire the fact that you just basically uprooted and kind of did something that was scary. And I said, well, yeah, truth is, Kurt, I have been trying to get out of California for many years. I just didn't have the guncture or the know-how or the means to do so until this move to Florida. I moved to Florida with my friend Becky, who I've known for God since we were practically babies almost. Um, I think third grade is when we met, and she is the one that got me here. I told her I need a change in my life. I feel stuck in California in every way. I have a job that I love, but I can't really be as successful as I want to be because I have a foot injury that was also because of the birth defect I was talking about earlier. Um, and I just gave her the laundry list, and she said, "All right, we're gonna get you to Florida." And I said, "How's that gonna happen?" I mean, I'm willing to do it, but how? And she said, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure out a way." And so she actually spearheaded a GoFundMe page on my behalf to get me to Florida. And I know many of those supporters are listening to this podcast. So I want to give a shout out to every one of them, tell them that I love them, and thank you so much for getting me here and making this dream come true. I have wanted to live in Florida, never mind living, just visit Florida for years. I am a diehard Disney fan.
Mm.
And so when I had the opportunity to move here, I was just like, you know what? It'll be my chance to actually visit Disney World. That's been a lifelong dream of mine. And so I'm going to do it. And, I had people say, well, it's, are you sure you're going to do, you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I want to do this. This is not something that I decided one day that I was going to do, on a whim. When Becky approached me, my original answer was kind of like, well, it'd be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. Um, I really went back and forth about it because it was a huge move. You know, um, it wasn't like I was moving to the Bay Area. I was moving clear across the country, and I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And a lot of times people will, and I'm speaking in general here, I'm breaking the fourth wall, as it will, but a lot of times people will try to discourage you because they are scared of the unknown on your behalf. And as well intended as that is, it's not always the best advice you can give the person who's making that big jump. Um, Take it from me, I've had a lot of naysayers who were adamantly against me moving to Florida. Um, but once they saw that I moved to Florida and how much happier I am, it's not perfect. I'll say that up front. It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but I feel a lot more at peace here.
Do you?
Um,
See, I loved California over Florida. I mean, I'm going to get grief for that, but honestly, I've always loved California. I don't like your taxes. I don't like the expensiveness of it all.
right.
But other than that, the several times I've been to California, I've like I could move here because your weather is so much nicer than ours. It's to have the cool nights, and where you can actually wear a leather jacket at night and have
Hmm.
hot days. But even the hot days aren't like they are here because and I know people are going to laugh about this, but it's a dry heat, and so it doesn't affect you nearly as much as the heat that we have here. At least it did me. It was nice to not sweat as soon as you got out of the shower.
For me, it was different. It was like the exact reverse because I have arthritis. And where I lived, yeah, it was moderate temperatures, but at nighttime, it can get very cold. I mean, not like, Midwest cold,
Right.
but not really even snowing, to be honest. We do get snow, but it's rare when it happens. But my bones just felt it the last couple winters, especially.
Mm.
Um, and it was just like I had a hard enough time working with my foot, but when the arthritis kicked in because of the cold weather, it was like I had times where I just straight up called work and said, I can't make it in today. And it's not that I wasn't feeling well, it's just my body wasn't letting me be mobile. And I was in bed all day. And I didn't like that. And so that was one of the things that I considered when I considered moving to Florida. I had to think, okay, is my body going to be happier there? Uh, I may hate the humidity, but I think my body might love it. And so
Right.
far, I've been correct on that.
Yeah, we don't get a whole lot of cold days in Florida. I since I can remember, we get maybe 30 cold days out of the year, and they're not 30 continuous days. It's like you have one or two here, then one or two here, and one or two. It's just it's you'll have it one day it's 40 degrees and the next day it's 89. So that
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, so it's definitely different. Um so again, I admire your spirit, and I wish people had that spirit. And as you said, as well intentioned as people are, because they're afraid of the unknown, and even in individuals who want to do something, they won't do it because they let that fear uh,
Mm,
paralyze them from doing what they want to do. And it's unfortunate because if they just looked that fear in the eye, they would find that it's nothing anywhere near as scary as they thought it was going to be if they
exactly.
would just go through with it. Is that what you found?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just thought about something when I was making the journey from California to Florida. I remember I took the ferry from Larkspur to San Francisco, and a street performer. As I said earlier, I'm a diehard Disney fan, so this really had significance on multiple levels. Um, there was a street performer that was playing the song from Frozen 2 Into the Unknown. And the timing was just impeccable. I mean, I even went up to him and I said, I love that you did a Disney song, but let me share something with you. And I told him that I was going into the unknown. I said, I'm literally taking that path into the unknown by moving to Florida right now. And he's like, when are you moving to Florida? I said, right now. I mean, I'm literally leaving in a week.
Could have happened at a better time.
Exactly. And so I took that kind of as an omen or as a sign that I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing.
Well, John, so have you been to Epcot? Because here we have Hollywood, or I think it's called Disney Studios now, and we have Epcot, and we have Animal Kingdom, all part of the Disney.
I have not, and that's one of the things I really want to get to do as soon as possible.
Well, you'll enjoy them. The parks are. I love Epcot, and of course, they now have which is part of Norway. They have the Frozen ride.
Frozen after,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like the old ride because I like the fact that there aren't a lot of kids in Epcot because it's more of an adult park. Now that ride's brought all these kids in there, but that's I guess what it's supposed to be for. But yeah. So so yeah, you'll enjoy those. And then I forget. It's Studios that has the Star Wars now, and
Mm-hmm.
that place is packed now. So
I actually did Galaxy's Edge, my last trip to Disneyland. Um, and the funny thing is, I did that trip literally 2 weeks before California shut down.
oh really?
So yeah, I was lucky because if I hadn't have made that trip, I would have never gone to Disneyland before my move to Florida. Anyhow, I uh, I was lucky enough to ride both of the main attractions there in Galaxy's Edge because at the time they were still doing the reservation system.
Oh,
Where you log into their app and then it's luck of the draw whether you get a boarding pass or not. Um, and so I remember one time there's something on Smuggler's Run where if you do some sort of code, you get to do some sort of bonus ride, that's not available to the general public, but you have to put that code in. And so I was doing a solo trip, and this is what I love about solo trips. You get to interact with people you wouldn't have otherwise
right.
because you were with somebody, you'd be talking to that person. So, anyways, I'm in line with this group that I got paired with, and I said to them, "So there's something about like a code that you can put in. Do you guys know about that?" And they're like, "No." I said, "Oh, good, thank God." I'm not the only one. But yeah, Disney is just one of the things that have always brought me joy. Um, I'm not too happy with the current CEO of Disney, but
Yeah, a lot of people
that.
aren't, but Disney has brought a lot of joy over the years to just millions and millions and millions of people, and um, you know, uh, it'll continue to do so regardless of whoever the CEO is, and
That's true.
tries to mess it up here and there. But yeah, I agree with you. I want to tell people because, like you said, you're not famous, and it's not that I always have famous people on my show because I don't. But the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because to me, you're the epitome of that spirit that I want people to understand. That I think people make too many excuses for themselves and saying, I can't do this because I have this or I have that. I'm not this, I'm not that. And you know, there are no excuses.
Mm-mm.
The only thing that stops you from doing what you want to do is yourself and your limiting beliefs. And and so I wanted people to see you, somebody who's accomplished, somebody who's overcome obstacles in your life and continue to overcome them, someone who's been through hardships, and yet you're doing the things that you want to do and living your life the way you want to live it and continuing to move forward. And I appreciate that in anybody. So I wanted to have you on the show, and as a shining example of, hey, I can do whatever I want to do if I just follow John's advice and just do it, and
Hmm.
make excuses for yourself. So before we go, I would like to hear, if you're so inclined, uh,
Hmm.
like maybe one of your poems, if you have something that you one that is in particular important to you, that if you
Oh my God, I have so many, but it was hard to pick just one, and I lost that page just now. Okay.
see people, I promise you this show's never been edited. So
Let's see. I love when this happens. Love it, love it, love it. All right, where is it? Okay. Okay, so while I'm finding this poem, I'm just going to tell you the story behind it.
okay.
Um, when I was writing this book, I was actually in a mental health crisis. I was very suicidal. It wasn't really that it was, I was actively thinking of ways to commit suicide. It was more along the lines of an apathetic attitude about life. Like, I really wish that I wasn't here right now. I really wish that, if I just died overnight, that would be perfectly fine. It's that kind of attitude. And I've been struggling with mental illness for years. So when I started having those thoughts, I knew I needed to reach out. And one of the things that triggered the depression to get as bad as it had is I had a trauma resurface. Um, and it was something that I didn't realize I hadn't really dealt with in terms of healing from it. And I'll be perfectly blunt right now and say that it dealt with being sexually abused. And it happened as an adult. It wasn't when I was a kid. And it was really painful for that to resurface again. I had a lot of self guilt. I had a lot of, you know, everything that they say victims go through. I went through in terms of, well, maybe if I hadn't have gone to the party, well, maybe if I hadn't have done this, well, maybe if I hadn't have done that. And it took me a while to realize that all those maybes are nothings. You know, this person who violated me would have violated somebody else if it wasn't me.
Right.
You know, okay, so I'm not finding it. So let's go to option number two.
Okay.
Sorry,
That's
folks.
okay. What's the,
Please stand by.
just let us know what the title is as well.
Okay, all right. Okay, this one's called From the Sea. The waters of the sea, the deepest blue, invite the soul to dive into love. Swim with the dolphins, fish flounder around me as I dive deeper in the sea. Sunlight begins to dimmer with each passing meter. The creatures of the deep swim around with curiosity. My body begins to tire, my soul begins to weep, feeling cold and alone, swimming deeper and deeper. Soon darkness falls on me. Disparaging thoughts invade my lungs. Unable to breathe, I surrender to the ocean until a faint light from below races to aid this weary soul. Taking my limp hand, this figure carries me to the water's surface. I feel strong yet tender. Hands caress my body. Hope has saved me from surrendering to despair. And that was actually the poem I was originally looking for.
Wow. So may I ask, like, how is this something that you were trained in? Like, how did you like so for someone who could never write poetry other unless
Mhm.
it rhymed, it's like, that type of poetry. I mean, I'm always amazed at how one gets to have a talent like that. And did your teachers help you to become trained in writing poetry, or is it
Um,
came
that's
natural?
a yes and a no question answer. Um, it wasn't really a teacher that I had per se, but it's a teacher that I knew. Um, I had a lady by the name of Louise Johnson who went to my parents' church, and her husband were, uh, you know, godsends for me because her husband is actually the one that got me into the resource specialist program. And she was always telling me once I got into high school, if you ever need help with homework, just give me a call. And when I got my assignment to write a poem in, my first day in mainstream English, I freaked out because I was, like you said, violets are blue, roses are red. I got a rhyme. You got it too. Um, I was like, I can't rhyme. I don't know how to rhyme. What am I going to do? And my dad's like, call Louise Johnson. She always says that if you need help, give her a call. So I did, and we got together, and she said, okay, so there's one thing that you need to know about poetry. Two things, actually. One is it doesn't always need to rhyme. And two is it needs to come from the heart, because if it doesn't come from the heart, it's not poetry. And so when she told me those two secrets, it was like, the possibilities were endless for me because I realized as I started to write more and more, it's not about a specific formula. You know, it's about what's inside your thoughts, how you're feeling in that moment, that expression that you want to convey to the reader, and the impact you want to make on the reader. Um, when I released my first book, um, I remember a friend of mine came up to me one time and she says, I just read your book and it couldn't have come at a better time because I lost my best friend that I've had for forever. And this is the first time I've experienced that kind of loss. And so thank you for writing that book because it's written a lot of thoughts that I can identify with.
Well,
And
I want to give a shout out to Louise Johnson and others like her who helped to inspire people like you, because then in turn you help to inspire others like your friend. and
hmm
and and I just love when things like that get passed down, and it keeps helping, because one person decided to help you, now you're
hmm
able to help others, and it just continues on. So just thank goodness that we have people like Louise Johnson, and teachers that took the time to help you, and inspire you to be the person you are. And uh and 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 I hope you'll go on and continue to inspire others as well. To you know, I hope there's a lot of people on this show who listen to your story and will get up off their butts and do the things that they're supposed to do, and overcome that fear that they have.
Me too. Me too. And I just want to tell people, don't get me, one time I had somebody on Facebook make kind of a remark. They're a family member. And so, of course, we grew up together. So he's going to give me shit regardless.
Right.
But he was just like, live in California, nothing's going right for me. Move to Florida, magically everything's going right for me. And I told him, I said, I never said and everything's going right. I just said things are getting better.
Right.
You know, so it's all about making first making the choice to make your life better any way that you can. Now, it's not about a grandiose plan like, you might think mine was, wake up one day and move to Florida. Lord knows it wasn't that easy. But, it's about saying, okay, if I can do one thing to make my life better for today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, what is that thing? And
Right.
just going from that point, you know, go to point from A to B to C to D to etc. until you get to the place where you are happy.
Right. That's good advice right there, John. Very good advice.
Thank you.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been a joy and a pleasure, and
Thank you for having me.
it's my pleasure. Thank you. So, um, good luck with getting to Disney, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it because it's much bigger than Disneyland. So,
Sure, may I make a shameless plug
oh yeah,
before I leave?
absolutely, and it's not even shameless. I'm sorry, I should have said, where can people go to reach your to buy your book? Um,
Um, both books are available on Amazon. Just do a search in Amazon for the first book, which is Voyages, Poetic Journeys, written by Jose Esparza. Um, and the second book is called Poetic Voyages 2 Poems and Tales in Isolation, also written by me.
Okay, and we'll also provide those links, folks, at the bottom here, so that way, again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you don't have to stop the car. You can just keep driving till you get to your destination, and the links will be there, so you can just click on them later. And of course, here on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to click at the bottom there where they'll be. Okay, so well, John, thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
And folks, thank you for joining us. And until next time, take care, be safe, and love yourself so you can love others. Bye.